Well, hello to all my timeless beauties. I hope you're all well. Today's video is slightly different. I wanted to talk about my journey with breast cancer. And the reason I wanted to do that was because I remember myself when I was first diagnosed looking for information out there. There is blogs out there. There are a lot of really great Facebook supportive networks and private groups to talk to people going through the same thing that you are, which is amazing. Social media has been amazing in that sense when I was going through my first diagnosis, not to feel so alone. I also think it would be really helpful to direct my friends and family to a YouTube video such as this, I'm hoping, that they could watch and help them understand what I was about to go through. Because when I was going through it, obviously you don't know what you're going to go through, so it's hard to answer everybody's questions and it's hard to tell them what you need from them, and it's hard for them to know what you need. So it's a really difficult kind of situation. It's only in hindsight that you can look back and say, actually, it would have been really great if that person did this or this person did this. And of course, knowing what I went through would have been easy the second time around. It's a bit like childbirth, I suspect, in that way. It's like you can't explain that to anybody until you've been through it. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I understand. But also you can't go into it with a complete vacuum of non-information, or else you'll be so shocked by the whole experience that you might never recover. So strap in, got my coffee with my daughter on it. She's very lovely, Mother's Day present. And let's get wild and tell my cancer story. So I was diagnosed in the middle of 2019. At the time, 2019 was pre-COVID and the world was kind of normal, but it wasn't normal for me. So I had felt a lump in my left breast, and I felt like it kind of came and went, which I thought I put down to hormones at the time. And then I kind of realised, oh no, it's still hanging around, I better go get it checked out. So I had a mammogram, honestly thought nothing of it. I honestly didn't think I would be here today telling this story. But had a mammogram and then got called back through Breast Screen Australia to have a second mammogram and also potentially a biopsy. So I had a second mammogram. I took my partner Ben with me and had the mammogram, and then a specialist came out and said, okay, yeah, there's definitely something there. We need to do a biopsy. Now, the biopsy was actually one of the worst things of the whole cancer experience, to be honest, because I wasn't prepared for it. It was like, okay, get your gear off and off you go, Ben. And suddenly this room, which was like a doctor's admin room, suddenly turned into a hospital. It's like getting beds and machines out and equipment. And they did a guided biopsy using an ultrasound, and it really hurt. I think I was just emotionally in shock that this was all happening. So had the biopsy. The nurses were lovely. I still remember that nurse that day who held my hand when it really hurt. A bit shell-shocked, went home, and then was called back a couple of days later and was given the news that I had breast cancer. So at that point, they actually ring your doctor for you. This is through Breast Screen Australia, who obviously have a really good process. So they rang my doctor. My doctor made a time for me to see her that day. So Ben and I went in to see her, and she basically did all the referrals I needed for the hospital. She explained the whole process. She organised all the scans that I'd need to do, and then we kind of went into bang, bang, bang mode. There are so many appointments when you're diagnosed with cancer. I don't think people have any kind of concept of that. Again, it's almost when you're pregnant and you suddenly have 5,000 appointments. It's like that, but on steroids. Like it's quite intense, particularly at the start. So they do a bunch of scans, had a CT scan through my whole body to make sure that it hadn't spread anywhere else. I also had a bone scan, which they just check that scan, it goes for a long time and you're by yourself in this room with this machine just kind of moving over you. That just checks whether it's, gone into your bones. So had those scans, waited for the results, then had my appointment with my surgeon. My surgeon was super lovely. I went through the Austin Hospital in Heidelberg. He was very old school, and he sat me down, and Ben was allowed to come then too, because this was all pre-COVID, and explained to me that I had stage 3 breast cancer and that it had spread to my lymph nodes. So that was quite shocking. He explained the cancer was aggressive, it was large, and because of that, we did what's called an adjunct treatment plan, which means that in a traditional sense, what you do is the surgery to remove the cancer, then you would do the chemo and the radio. Now, they realised that the chemo is the most important part with aggressive cancer, so they did the chemo first to kill any cancer cells and, you know, stop it growing. Then they did the radiotherapy, and then I had the surgery last. So this whole process was over a year. So I had 6 months of chemo. I was on 2 different types. The first one was a very strong chemo called AC, and I had that every second week, and it used to take me pretty much a week to recover, and then I'd have a week of feeling okay, and then I'd have the AC again, and then it would go like that. And for me, chemo was just like a really bad hangover that you just felt like crap. Now, they give you all kinds of drugs that make you feel better, so I never threw up or anything like that. I just felt super tired, really drained, really physically and mentally exhausted, and foods tasted a bit weird. And yeah, just to me, that's the best description. It just felt like the worst hangover of your life. During that time, I kept working, so I would, which was great for me because I have to be busy, I have to work. Like, that's just me. I can't sit around thinking about terrible things. I tried to keep life as normal as possible, so my work were awesome. They just allowed the time that I needed to recover, and then I worked from home when I could, and I went into the office when I could, and we kept that up through the whole chemo. I swapped to the second type of chemo, I think it was after 6 weeks, something like that. And the second type of chemo was weekly, but the side effects weren't as bad. However, chemo is a cumulative drug. I still remember the first one I had, I felt absolutely fine. I was like, oh, this is easy. And then, you know, each time you have it, it does make you feel more tired. So there was that factor to it. And of course, during that time is when delightful side effects of my hair falling out. So my hair fell out first, so I got it cut into a little bob because I had really long hair. I'll insert some photos of that. So I went from the really long hair that I'd pretty much had all my life to the bob. Bob started falling out, so then I went and had it all clipped off. That all fell out. So that happened first, then my eyebrows fell out after that, and my eyelashes actually hung in there until right at the end of chemo. They didn't fall out until kind of the end of the 6 months post chemo, which was interesting and sad. Like, I actually coped better, I think, with my hair falling out and my eyebrows falling out than I did my eyelashes, which is interesting because I could always say that this was just this, you know, a fashion choice that I was making, being a punk rocker, you know, shaving my head. But when your eyelashes fall out and you're as pale as me, it can make you look quite ill. My skin actually almost went see-through. My freckles really came to the fore. My skin was really thin and it almost had that blue tinge. So I was always looking for super hydrating products to, you know, just keep it as happy as I could. So I couldn't use anything other than super gentle products. So we'll do a video on what products that saw me through chemo because I think that would be helpful for people. For my hair, I did have a wig. I hated that wig. I used to call her Moira after the character in Schitt's Creek who had lots of wigs. It was itchy, it was sweaty. I just didn't enjoy it. So I used to wear it and then literally walk in the door and rip it off, and then I often wore just a scarf or something soft on my head, and I just really got over it. I couldn't care less anymore. No one ever came up to me and said, hey, you got cancer. No one ever, you know, I honestly think people are busy in their own lives, and particularly strangers. People that knew me obviously would say something. I had one person, a parent of my daughter at school, say, oh, did you shave your head for, you know, Shave for a Cure fundraising? And I went, no, actually didn't shave my hair fall out because I have cancer. But that was fine. She was fine. It was a good conversation to have, but most people didn't even bat an eyelash. lucky when you have eyelashes that you can bat, because I didn't during that time. Again, don't take it for granted, eyelashes, I love you. That perspective, no one cared, and therefore I didn't care. And it was actually quite liberating in a way, because I really think that I quite identified with my long hair, because I'd had it all my life. People used to comment on the colour, because it's, you know, I'm a strawberry blonde. It's a bit of an unusual colour naturally. And one of the first things, if I met someone for the first time, I go, oh, you got lovely hair. And so it became kind of an identifying factor for me. So losing that, I was quite upset about. But then when it happened, it made me really realise I'm not my hair, I'm not my eyelashes, I'm not my eyebrows, I'm not my cancer, I'm me. So having that all kind of stripped back was a really great life lesson for me. Do I wish that I'd gotten cancer? No. Am I glad for the lessons that it taught me? Absolutely. I think cancer and going through cancer treatments really shows up if there's anything in your life that is not working. I think if you were in a relationship that had some cracks in it, it would be really hard to get through it. Whereas for me, my partner and I, we're soulmates. We just adore one another, and he was right there every step of the way, came to every chemo session, held my hand. He looked after me beautifully, as did my daughter. She was absolutely very sweet and adorable during that time. So I felt a lot of love. I've had a lot of love for my family and my close friends, which was really special, because a lot of times you don't feel that. Even when I had my child, I don't think, some people reached out, but it was quite a lonely time in a lot of ways when you're a first-time mum. With the cancer, I actually didn't feel lonely, because a lot of people reached out. I had a lot of people drop off food after I had surgery. I had a lot of old friends contact me out of the blue and tell me that they were thinking of me, and it was actually a really lovely experience to receive all that love. It made me feel less alone, and again, just not identifying myself with the cancer, but really coming back to the essence of me. So onto the radiotherapy was after the chemo. The actual radiotherapy was fine. You have it every day, and I think it was about 6 weeks that I had it, and you're going to see the same people every day. They were lovely people. We'd have a laugh. You're lying there while this machine goes over you and does its little laser bits, and that was all fine. It was only right at the end that I started to burn, and because I'm so fair, I burnt really badly, even though I did all the things, kept the area well moisturised, did all the things that you should do to hopefully prevent burning. I couldn't. I burnt so badly, and that was probably the most miserable that I was during the whole cancer experience. There was probably a week or two where it was so bad that I was in a lot of pain. I was on some really heavy painkillers, and I was pretty miserable, but it healed up pretty quickly after those 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I was miserable for that time. I got through it. I actually stopped working during the radiotherapy process because I was doing it daily, and I just couldn't see how I could get to the hospital, do that, get home, and then go into work. I was so tired by that point. So I actually took 6 months off work, and I was really lucky because I had insurance, extra insurance, which allowed me to do that. So I did get some money through my insurance company while I was on that 6 months leave. I think I got paid. There was a 3-month waiting period, so I had to take long service leave that I'd accrued for that 3 months, and then I had 3 months of paid through my insurance. So that was good. Would have been in a bit of trouble if I didn't have that, to be honest. So it's something I think everyone should look at. It was through my superannuation, so it's always worth topping that up, I think, and checking out what you have, because you never know. Now, side note, I had no family history of breast cancer, and I did the genetic test and didn't have the gene, so it was totally out of the blue. So it can happen to anyone. And at the time that I was diagnosed, I was actually feeling great. I was exercising a lot, I was eating really well, I was probably the happiest I'd been for a few years. Cancer is one of those things that can just happen, and as lots of doctors told me, they don't know what causes it. There are contributing factors, but they actually don't know why someone like me got it. It can happen to anyone. After the radiotherapy, I had surgery, so I chose to have a double mastectomy on the advice of my surgeon, and I also had a DIEP flap reconstruction at the same time. And what that means is that they use some of my tummy to make breasts. which is pretty clever. I also had my lymph nodes removed from under my left arm. Yeah, it had travelled there as well. So that was a major operation, and that was at the start of COVID. It was so weird. Ben was allowed to visit me once in the hospital, but no one else was, and I still remember all the nurses freaking out. What was happening. They were turning one of the wards into a COVID ward. It was all happening, and I was lucky, I think, that I got in for that surgery when I did, and it didn't get pushed out, because I think I was right on that cusp of everything changing because of COVID. I also remember they stopped doing all elective surgery, so I was one of the few patients that was in the recovery ward, which was kind of weird as well. I had lots of nurses looking after me, which was, quite lovely. Some delightful nurses. Nurses are awesome. They really got me through that time, particularly as I couldn't have visitors, except, Ben, I think, came visit me once. I was there for a week, and then he came to pick me up, and that was that. So I couldn't see my daughter during that time. Thank goodness for technology. Like, I sent her a few videos, did FaceTime, that kind of thing. But I was in a pretty bad way in hospital. I had really low blood pressure. I had to have a blood infusion. I had to stay in ICU for a bit. Now, that's all a bit of a blur. Like, I do remember it, but not the details all that much, which is my brain protecting me. But it was a slow recovery. My blood pressure stayed low for quite a while, and I remember they just had to keep checking it 5,000 times. And it was like, oh, I'm so tired, I need to sleep. But no, they're trying to make sure that you're alive, which, is really important. Once I got through that, I went home, and then I had about 6 weeks of not being able to do all that much. I was cut all along my tummy, which is where they, got the bits of tummy to make the breasts. I had my nipples removed. I had lots of pain under my arm where I had the lymph nodes removed. That was actually probably the worst, and I still do have pain there. And it's been a year and a half now since the surgery, and I think that's just my life. It's not terrible pain. I'd say it's like a 2 out of 10, but I think it's always going to be there. Still remember when I went for my first walk, I went, okay, after a few days, I'm like ready to go for a little stroll, and it was so painful, and I just cried and cried when I got home. And I remember just thinking, will I ever feel normal again? But I did, and I do. So after 6 weeks, I kind of started getting back to normal, and I actually came back to work. But of course, everyone was working from home, which actually suited me really well. So I think the message I would give people who are watching this because they've got a loved one going through cancer is to try and be positive. I felt really bad when people would be upset, like they were already planning to go to my funeral. And I have stage 3 cancer, which is, pretty serious. But it's not stage 4, so it is treatable and is curable. But people would hear stage 3 and start freaking out, and then I'd end up comforting them. So I'd say, if you are going to be upset because of a friend, try not to do it in front of them. Now, you can be empathetic, you can say that you're upset, but I think it's you trying so hard to be strong yourself, and then when you see the people around you falling apart, you're like, oh, actually, am I meant to be falling apart here? It starts kind of really eating away at you. So I would say try to be positive and do things that show that you care in a practical manner, and don't ask what that is. You need to make some suggestions. You can say, I'm going to drop some food around. Does Friday night work? I'm going to take your kid out for a play date. I'm going to come with you to your next chemo session. Like, things that are really practical and helpful, but the person who's going through the chemo doesn't have a whole lot of ability to think about anything that beyond what they're going through. So if you just say, I'm going to help, what can I do to help? You're kind of going to go as the patient, oh no, we're fine. If you say, okay, I'm going to drop off your dinner for tonight, I'm going to take your kid down to the playground for a couple of hours to give you a rest, you're like, yes. I only have to say yes to that without, giving it much thought, and it's really helpful. The other thing I would say is cancer's a really long process of treatments, and again, it's like having a baby. Like, people are all, up in your grill when you first have a baby, and then they all kind of fall away. Cancer can be a bit like that. Everyone's very intense at the start, and then they all go off and have their own lives and kind of forget what you're going through, which, you know, that's human nature, but I also think it's worth, with your group of friends, like whether you make a WhatsApp group or whatever you do, just kind of saying, hey, have you checked in with that person? Do you know how they're going? What's the latest? Just to make sure you're keeping that support group there for them, because yeah, it can fall away, which, you know, can also be quite lonely when you're the patient. The other thing is to celebrate wins, like the end of chemo, the end of radiotherapy, you know, your results when you get them. Like, celebrate the small wins that go along, even when your hair starts growing back or your eyebrows start growing back. Like, make sure you celebrate with your family member or your friends those milestones, because they are really important to the person, and it's, you know, it's always great to have things to celebrate. One thing I would say, if you're watching this and you're just being diagnosed with cancer, is it's not all bad, honestly. In a way, it's going to sound crazy, but I don't regret that I went through that. Do I wish that I'd gone through it? Would I wish that anyone? No, but I don't regret it for me. It actually changed my life in a lot of ways, and I'll do a couple of videos on that. Like, I found spirituality, calmness in me that I'd never had before. I'm definitely a better person having gone through it, and I think I'm a better partner, I'm a better mum, I'm a better boss, I'm a better person. It really has been quite profound for me. So it's not all terrible. Now, I don't know what the future holds for me. I could get it back tomorrow. Like, I don't know. And I'm actually at peace with that, because I've gone through this, and, you know, again, it's like having childbirth when you go through and you're like, holy dooly, women can do that. It's like, you know, now that I've gone through this, I'm like, I've done that. I really feel like I can do anything. And also, I'm at peace with whatever happens. Whatever happens is going to happen, you know. I don't have control over that. I only control my response to it, and I can only control my everyday in the moment that I am. It's very Eckhart Tolle in that way. Like, the power of now is quite profound. Now, I read that book years ago, didn't understand it. Whereas now I feel like I could write that book because I understand it, because of what I've been through. So we'll talk about that kind of spiritual aspect in a different video, because I think it's really interesting for some people, maybe not for others, but no, I learned a lot of lessons. So I would say, again, don't be scared if you're going through this. Well, you can be scared, because you will be scared. You will find strength in yourself that you didn't know you had. You will find love from family and friends in your life, and strangers that you'll meet during this journey, and nurses, other patients when you're sitting there waiting for your radiotherapy appointment. You will have amazing connections with people that you've never had before, that will be life-changing in a really positive way. One of the great outcomes was I discovered a real connection to nature. Now, because surgery coincided with the COVID lockdown, the first massive lockdown in Melbourne, and playgrounds were closed, my daughter and I realised that we were really close to Mary Creek. Mary Creek was the place that, when I was able to start exercising, my daughter and I would go for walks, and when we got our beautiful rescue dog, we take our rescue dog down there as well. Friends when we were able to, so we would meet friends down there as well, and climb trees and pat dogs and just be at one with nature, listening to the birds down there, seeing the most stunning butterflies that you've ever seen. It was really quite meditative for me. It really helped me in a way that I really struggled to explain. I never think I'd had a massive connection with nature before. I've always been more of an indoors person, I think, but I think going through this experience, it really, you know, kind of crystallized that thought that there is a universe in a grain of sand, as William Blake said, and just being out there and feeling the sun on my skin, listening to the birds chirp, seeing the butterflies flying around. I often dreamed about my daughter, and in my dream she's a butterfly. And I remember one of the first times I walked down the creek on this stunning, beautiful day when I was able to start exercising, and I'm just being surrounded by all these butterflies and just feeling this kind of profound sense of connection to nature and to my daughter, and to, you know, love it just, yeah, it was really mind-blowing. I've kept that connection big time. We go down the creek as much as I can. I go for walks as much as I can. I'm just really just dying to go outside in a way that I never used to. And again, I can thank my cancer journey for that, because I think without it, I wouldn't have that feeling of connection and wonder on the sublime nature of nature. So I just wanted to touch on what cancer can do for kids. My daughter was in prep when I was diagnosed with cancer. She's an awesome kid, and she was awesome to me through the process. Really loving, really caring. However, it was super stressful for her. It was probably the most stressful thing for her than anyone else. She didn't know the word cancer, but she certainly saw me being very sick. She certainly saw her mum lose her hair that, you know, my daughter loved. And, you know, there's no way you could live in this house and not pick up what was going on. But because she was so young, it was hard for her, I guess, to talk about it. We have now got her help, because we found at the end of my treatments, and when I was, you know, getting healthier and back to normal, she was really struggling. She was kind of lashing out at other kids, having trouble controlling her temper. She was having trouble controlling her emotions. And it really, I think, was post-traumatic stress to reaction to what she'd been through, watching her beloved mum. Even today, you know, she sleeps in bed with me and I pat her like a baby to sleep every night, even though she's about to turn 8. And I never had to do that when she was a baby. She was an awesome sleeper. So, you know, I honestly think she, needs to be wrapped up in love by me and her family and her friends, just to comfort her as a reaction to what she witnessed. So don't underestimate the impact on kids that cancer in the family can have, and make sure, you know, you talk to the schools. We've got a whole care plan for her, and we've had to get a lot of extra help for her. Now, I have no doubt she will be an awesome adult. She's an awesome human being, and she'll continue to be an awesome, well-adjusted human being, but she has gone through something super traumatic. And as the adults, we need to support her through that, and to recognise that, and to understand where her behaviour is coming from. I just wanted to point that out, because I think sometimes we think the kids aren't watching or not realising, but they are. They sure are. They're watching, and sometimes they're not okay. But we have the power to make them as okay as humanly possible. So I've got to land the video there, because I've rabbited on for a long time, but I hope this is helpful for some people. I'd love to hear, you know, any comments about what I've been talking about, or what you've been through, what your family's been through. Yeah, so have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.